Good morning, fearless followers. It's Josh, and I'm here with your word of the day on July 5, and we're looking at a fairly complicated passage in 2 Samuel 11, and it's one of the passages that makes King David infamous in the Bible. One night, he decides what seems to be just to go for a walk on the rooftop, and he sees a woman by the name of Bathsheba bathing, and overcome with lust, uses his power and authority as king to force her to sleep with him. In fact, he rapes her. So that's a really hard part in and of itself. We learn that she's a married woman. We learn that she becomes pregnant. Later in the chapter, when he's confronted by one of the prophets, the prophet actually gives us this story of a man that takes his neighbor's animal and kills it, and forcibly takes it. And so there's this real tension there of David not only using his power and his authority as the king to fulfill his own sexual desires, but causing all kinds of devastation to a family, to Uriah, Bathsheba's husband. He arranges it so Uriah is killed. And so there's this just really gnarly story of David trying to cover things up, cover up his mistakes, cover up his failures, cover up his sin. But here's where it starts, and we miss it in the story if we're not paying attention, and we don't know the context. He decides he's going to go for a walk on the rooftop, and what appears to be this simple situation where he's just out walking and he just happens to see Bathsheba a ways out. What we need to understand is, in the days of Israel, in the days of David, there was a specific time that women bathed on the rooftop of their houses. They didn't have, they had dirt floors, okay? And so if you bathed inside, it would make a mess, and it was commonly known culturally that women cleaned themselves at that time of day, at a certain time in the evening. And everybody knew it. Men knew they weren't supposed to be going outside. Men knew that they weren't supposed to be looking at the rooftops. They weren't supposed to be out at that time, because that was the time that women were bathing. So what we need to understand is that David knew that women would be bathing at that time. David woke up and wanted to see naked women that weren't his wife. He wanted it. He knew where he could get it. He knew where he could see that, and he acted on it. It started, the whole mess started with David's desires to sin, to see, to look. And it turned into this nightmare in the Bible. And I think for us today, as we think through this upcoming teaching on what it means to not commit adultery, we need to understand first and foremost that it begins with our desires. And the reality is that we all know where we can go to see and look at the things that we shouldn't see and look at. We all know what's available to us in the world of social media, in the world of technology, in the world of smartphones. It's all around us. And we have to start with our desires and ask the question, why am I looking at this? Why do I want to see this? Why are my desires like this? And go before the Lord and ask God to help us, to confess those desires, and ask him to help us, to give us self-control, to give us the ability to say no. That's the real beginning. It doesn't start in the action. It doesn't start in the gnarly mess that we get ourselves into. It starts with the desires. It starts with the things that we want deep inside that we know aren't right for us. That's where it starts. And if we're honest, we know where we can go for it. But we also know that we can go to God and ask him to help us in the way. Ask him to help us in the process. So there's the word for today. It's a little longer. It's a longer passage. And there's a lot to it. So if you have questions about it, give us a call. Email us. We'd love to chat with you about it more. But yeah, it starts with our desires. So how are you desiring God today more than other things? How are you desiring that relationship with him beyond other things? That's the question. That's the word. That's the day. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.